city, and it was nice outside, so I figured, like, let me come up and do this on my roof. I just recently released my song She. Here in the States, as most people around the world know, we have a newly elected president, as some of my family and friends affectionately just call 45. And at the time of the general election, there was a lot of talk of immigration and refugees and building a wall. My father and my grandmother were refugees after World War II. Never really knew who my grandfather was, so that quarter of me is kind of a mystery, but my dad says that he was a German soldier. After World War II, the Soviets came in and took over areas that they wanted, and 3 of those states were the Baltic states: Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Stalin, at the same time that, or maybe just a bit after Hitler was putting Jews in concentration camps, Stalin was taking people from the Baltic states and Ukraine and other areas in Poland and sending them off to concentration camps in Siberia, or just killing them. My grandmother never spoke about it, and my grandmother and I also didn't speak the same language, so I know it made her very anxious to talk about it. She would have never spoken about it with me anyway. It was, when she called, it was a lot of like, your daddy home? And that was about all I got out of her. And when we went to go visit, she would speak to my father in Estonian, and my brother and I would sit there watching Star Trek. In 1945, after World War II, my grandmother fled from the Soviets, fearing for her life, and she fled to Germany. She was in the U.S. Section of Germany for the refugees. Her and my father lived there for about 4 years, and then an American citizen sponsored my mother and my father to come here. So that whole idea of keeping out refugees and because maybe one of them is a terrorist, like, it's just so, it's history repeating, and it's so ridiculous, and it really hit home with me, because I was like, this is my father. My father and my grandmother were refugees, and if someone had not sponsored them to come here, what would have happened to them, and who would I have been, and where would I have wound up? So as this talk of keeping out refugees was kind of prevalent in the general election, it really got me thinking about my grandmother's situation and what she endured and what she went through to come here. And I started to really think about it, and really, more than just sympathize, but empathize with her. And I started just writing some of these lyrics, and then I went to go record them just as like some scratch vocals, and I couldn't even get through the chorus, because in a way that I had never ever felt before, I just felt this connection to my grandmother, and just really understanding how fearful she must have been, and how hard it must have been what she went through, which is something that I will, even though we have a crazy man in office, it's probably not something that I'm ever going to understand, just the fear and, that instinctual need and want to live, and doing everything that it takes to get yourself and your child out of harm's way. And they went without food for months. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for her. So I know that's very long-winded, but the song is about it's a big story, and it's a huge moment in history that a lot of times it's not taught, and it's very often forgotten unless you are a history buff, or you are from that area and you know that area. Most people don't know. Everyone knows Hitler, but most people don't even know the name Stalin. The song also then, it started off as being about my grandmother, and then of course it's about both my grandmothers. They both struggled to come here to the United States, give me a pretty cushy life. And then it also just turned into this song of female empowerment. The chorus could be applied to really anybody. When I wrote it, was specifically talking about my grandmother, but I realized that it doesn't just have to be about her. And so that's why in the video you see images of many different women, and you see images of us at the Women's March, because, you know, my hope is that it is a kind of an anthem for all women. And then my co-songwriter, his name's Justin Artolino, he had been wanting to work with me for a while, and he sent me this track that he had, you know, this piece of this track that he had started working on like years ago. And I was just like, you know, I think that what I'm writing, I think I can fit it over this. And so I just kind of pieced together the structure from what he sent me, and I started singing my lyrics over top, and I sent it to him, and he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We have to continue with this. And then, you know, a certain man became president, and then the Women's March became a reality, and we knew we had to get this song done. Lately, with songs, as I write them, I'm thinking of the video at the same time, and I'm visualizing it. And again, I started writing the song before Orange Man became president. So I had no idea that the Women's March was even going to be a thing. We had already started talking about the video. My friend Karolina Tajskowska, I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. It's a very Polish last name. She and I had been talking about the video for a while, even before the song was finished. She and I started shooting the video. We knew we wanted to do the footage at the cemetery. We knew we wanted to do the footage of the women, and then once he became president, I knew that we had to get footage from the Women's March too. The video took almost as long as the song did. The song took us, you know, with everything, it took us about 4 months to finish writing and finish the production and get it mixed and mastered, and we were doing the video at the same time. And just coordinating everyone's schedules, getting all the women on camera. We actually had to do reshoots in the cemetery. We actually went to the cemetery where my grandmother's actually buried. And before we were going, you know, I took Karolina out to New Jersey on the train, and then it's like another 40-minute drive to where my grandmother is buried. But we stopped at my parents' house first, and my mom said, as we were about to leave, my mom said, you know, I think your grandmother doesn't have a headstone. And I was like, that was the whole purpose of bringing Karolina down here, was to get the actual headstone. And there was like a little plaque, but it's one of those temporary things so that you know where the headstone's supposed to go. We shot that a little bit. We shot some other stuff in the cemetery, but it's such a tiny cemetery that you could see all the houses along the side, and you could see all the traffic going by, and it just, none of it really worked. We used a few shots from that cemetery, but most of it didn't work, and so we wound up going out to this humongous cemetery in Middle Village in Queens, and there, you know, we just kind of went into the center of the cemetery, and you can't see anything but graves, and we just picked a grave that didn't have anything on it. We used the back side of it, and she, you know, kind of did some cool photoshopping work to get my grandmother's you know, name on there. And I'm sure it's obvious that it's not actually her grave. I'm sure it's obvious that it's not real, but we tried to get it to look as real as possible. And then I had her add Vaba Est, which I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it means free Estonia. In the cemetery where my grandmother is buried, there's this huge headstone that says something about all the Estonians, and then it says Vaba Est, and then there's everyone's placards, like all the Estonians that are buried there are in front of this headstone. And so my step grandfather's placard is there, Jacob Leholm. So I wanted to add just something of my Estonian heritage. I kind of wanted to drive that point home of why she fled, why she's here, what Estonia is still going through with Putin now. I love, you know, everyone's reactions to it, and I think especially my family that I can give them something that I created that's very personal for everyone. I've given back to my family who has given so much to me to allow me to even do what I do. But compared to my previous material, a lot of my older stuff tends to be a little bit more electronic. We've got some dubstep in there, but I really didn't feel like that was the right choice for this song. This song is very much a ballad, and I think it was always meant to be that way. Even before I got the track from Justin and I was just writing it on my own, I knew that I didn't want it to be this big, heavy beat thing. It's, you know, it's sentimental, and it's personal history, and it's my family history, and I wanted the music to convey that as well and not be this like total opposite left field thing. Like I wanted people to hear the story and hear the lyrics, and so I felt like, you know, a slower moving, more ballad type of song was more conducive to that than like some of my other, you know, my song Out of Control is this very dubsteppy, heavy hitting song, which I love as well, but I just didn't feel like that was the right mood for She. You can go to KiirstinMarilyn.com and you can watch the video. You can listen to the song on SoundCloud. You can download it for free on Noise Trade. If you want to leave a tip, all the proceeds are going to go to Planned Parenthood. And yeah, thank you so much to Vanessa and House in the Sand for allowing me to do this weird video. Thanks so much.